Welcome back to Lucid Living. And if this is your first time, welcome. I'm so happy to have you aboard. My name is Andrew Larkin. I'm an actor, model, performer, storyteller, breathwork coach, and today I'm going to be your host, your guide for today's podcast episode. All right, my friends, we got a special guest today because this isn't his first rodeo. This is actually our second time hopping on the pod. We had him, God, dude, it's been about a year, but we got a lot has happened in that year, and we got a different format today. So we're gonna dive into some real juicy stuff. I'm really excited for this conversation. But before we introduce our amazing guest, we're gonna do a little bit of breathing, if you don't mind. So we're gonna do what today is a 4 count box breath. So that's gonna be an inhale for 4, a hold for 4, an exhale for 4, and a hold on that retention for 4. Remember, as we breathe, we're gonna inhale through the nose, and as we inhale for 4, we're gonna expand the belly outwards like you're filling up a water balloon. Nice big belly. Hold at the top, and then let's exhale out the mouth for 4. Hold at the bottom for 4. I'm going to be counting and guiding throughout it, so just breathe with us, nice and easy. It's a balancing breath technique, so it calms our nervous system down, brings us back to equilibrium. Great way to start our day, if we're in the middle of our day, or finish our day. It's always beautiful. So 3 rounds of this. Let's take this moment and ground ourselves. Focus on the breath. Listen to the breath. Feel the belly rise and fall with the breath. And let's begin with the inhale. Inhale through the nose in 3, in 2, in 1. Big inhale through the nose. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. Exhale out the mouth. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. Inhale through the nose. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. Exhale out the mouth. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. Last one. Inhale through the nose. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. And exhale out the mouth. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. All right, you can return to your natural breathing. Whew. Feel good, feel energized, feel balanced. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my friends, today we got a traveler, an exotic car exporter, an outdoor enthusiast, a lover of philosophy, and an avid reader. We got our second time in the Lucid Living Podcast world. We got Cole Von Cannon. What's going on, brother?
Not too much, man. Not too much. Glad to be here. Appreciate the invite.
Dude, always, always. So for those of you who don't know, we met through a mutual friend last summer. Was last summer when we met? Or was it?
I feel like it was later than that, man. We've known each other for shoot. I remember we've known each other since I believe it was Cage's grandmother did her final dance in Shag, which had to
Mm,
be at least 2 years ago at Fat Harold's. And before that, I mean, there was somebody's birthday we came through on. So it's been intermittent.
yeah,
But I would say at least 2.5, man. No
yeah.
way we could, because I've known you since at least college, and it's
Mm-hmm.
been over 2 years ago, which
Yeah,
is
dude. Gosh, time
so
goes.
honestly, maybe even three. Who knows?
Yeah,
Who
yeah,
knows?
yeah. So we met through a mutual friend. Would have been Cage Mitchell.
Yeah.
And just an amazing group of people down south. I knew Cage from Coastal. Did you
Mhm.
know Cage personally, or do you know him through court? Growing up?
So I knew him through court. And actually, so I think I know the first time we ended up interacting because I believe it was it Bonnaroo, or you went to one of the music festivals at that time, and I remember we were outside playing cornhole, and you had this, I think you had the playlist going from that, and then I asked you where you got all that music from. You were telling me about your music festival experience, or maybe that was somebody else at the party. But yeah, I met Cage through court. He was one of the first people I really connected to in college. It's about sophomore year, and we had I was coming off of a different experience within the fraternity system, and I kind of wanted to set out and do my own thing. And me and him connected over the potential of starting or restarting Sigma Chi at South Carolina.
Mm.
Somehow we let him, as a freshman, be president, and I was vice president, and we were pretty much inseparable for the next two and a
Mm.
half years, trying to basically herd chickens
Mm-hmm.
and try not to get shut down again during COVID and all this crazy experience. Which starting a fraternity is wild enough, but during a global pandemic, doing everything virtual was a complete mess.
Mm-hmm.
But he stuck it with me ever since, man. He's the go-to, and now he's down in Tampa now, which is awesome. Down in the St. Pete's area, which I would say I've been a couple places around the U.S., but that was the first place I was immediately pissed off I didn't live. So he's living his
Mm-hmm.
best life, and he's with a couple other fraternity brothers. So yeah,
Yeah.
wishing him best. But
Good
also,
dude.
good to see him again at the wedding, and that's kind of where we reconnected as well.
Mm-hmm.
So glad to see him back up in the Carolinas. But yeah, he's back in the palm trees, man. Can't do
Can't
anything
go
about
wrong.
it.
Can't go wrong with that. But yeah, so our buddy Cage just recently got married. It was a big day. That was a few weeks ago now, and just so
Dude,
much fun.
yeah.
I was able to bring my sister down, and that was when we reconnected. I was like, dude, we got to have on the podcast again. I wasn't on it, and we got to do it again. And it's just always good, dude, having our deep philosophical conversations, just talking about life. You're one of the go-to. So I'll put in the show notes our older episode where I forget we were talking about what were we talking like we were talking about some like I don't remember. It was like decision fatigue and like all kinds of really cool stuff. Uh,
Yeah. Decision fatigue is fascinating, man. I think, and I might forget exactly the details because it's been quite a while, but I remember the example that I brought up during that, which was so interesting to me, is it's called the grocery store example. And there was a couple researchers from university basically staged a experiment, and it's been replicated a couple different times. But basically, they have and you can do it with pretty much any associated thing. But they tried, I believe, this time with salsa. So they had one stand where they went into a grocery store and they gave out free samples of salsa. One of the grocery stores they gave out three samples, and the other one they gave out 20 samples. Um, and on the grocery store were three examples. They would come in, they would try the three, and then make the decision and leave. And same thing for the other one. And when they were interviewed, the people who went through the sampling process after they left the grocery store, they asked them, how satisfied were you with your purchase? What was the like? Did you purchase any? And it turns out that with three choices, people actually left more satisfied and were more likely to buy something than if they had 20 options, which seems counterproductive. But basically, what it said is if you have too many things to decide between, you'll basically end up going for perfect and you'll end up with nothing.
mhm.
Um, because, if you have three, you have mild, spicy, really spicy. I mean, all right, I'm a mild guy. Cool. If you have five different types of mild salsa, you can spend all day at that store trying to figure out which one's for you, and then get frustrated and leave. And I think life is the same thing in a lot of ways. And I think there's a big illusion over maybe what is actually possible. As a kid, people tell you can be anything. So how do you decide whether to be an astronaut or a basketball player?
Mhm.
But you get older, bust out your knee like I did, realize zero gravity sounds terrifying, and suddenly you start to actually narrow that funnel a little bit, which
Mhm.
for most people feels kind of claustrophobic when it comes to the decision making process. But when you realize that if you can get it down to a couple small decisions on what you could potentially go into life or trajectory wise, it's a lot less stressful than walking around every day thinking that you could be anything and putting that stress on you to where again it's basketball or astronaut. Like
Mhm.
both of them probably aren't possible, but you need to find what's in your current lane and what makes sense for you.
Mhm. Yeah, bro. And I'd heard a similar story around making decisions in regards to ice cream. It's the same concept, but you get
Same
strawberry,
thing.
chocolate, vanilla, and they're more satisfied than if you go to like a Handles and you have 50 different options because of that decision. Fatigue. And that is like permeating our culture with social media, with streaming platforms. Dude, I
Unbelievable,
love
man.
films and I just don't know what to choose, and then I just get pissed off and I don't do anything. And I read a book.
Yep.
We're gonna talk about reading in a bit. But yeah, and if you're listening to this and you're an actor, because I know I love reaching out to actors, but there's like now we have self tapes, and dude, we can do like 40 different self tapes and try to pick from it, and it's exhausting and it's terrible, dude, versus doing three
Oh
solid
yeah.
choosing from that. So there's so many ways that permeates into our lives, and we're gonna dive into all the goods. But right now, I just want to ask, where are you geographically, and then how are you feeling in this particular moment, season of life?
Dude, things are crazy. I'm not gonna lie. It's interesting coming back after a year, because I believe, back then I was a little bit unsure of where I was heading. I had an idea, but it hadn't been executed. And then, since that podcast, I basically I realized in my current position that, and this is something that I think everybody should kind of look at for themselves, is there's a couple things that I realized from my job outside the car exporting, which is amazing. Wouldn't change that for a bit. But I worked in a financial company, and what I realized was that there was no reason for me to grow.
Mm,
They didn't growth wasn't required as part of the job. That's one thing that was kind of a red flag for me. And I think right now, money aside, your 20s are definitely for building yourself and understanding what you want to be, but it's almost more importantly about building skills that you can eventually use in creative ways later. You don't necessarily need to be the creative at this point, but you have to be able to be competent and prepare yourself for that opportunity coming down the line. And when I felt that growth wasn't a part of that current position, I realized I might need to look elsewhere. And the second thing that was quite an interesting perspective that at least I had was that I couldn't find anybody that I worked for or worked with that I wanted to be
mm,
eventually. And I think if I had to give any advice for somebody trying to figure out if where they are is where they want to be, I mean, unless you're getting paid a ridiculous amount of money and it's worth whatever you're doing at that point, if you can't find somebody within the company that you admire and want to eventually be and move into, um, I think it's time to look elsewhere. And so I started the process of applying for graduate school, partly because I really, really wanted to go to Europe. I wanted to go outside the U.S. in some ways, and a lot of that was just for my own interests. Obviously, adventure is tough to turn down, but you can't really put a price on a perspective switch like that. I kind of liken it to like living your entire life in the highway inside of a car and then taking that one chance to actually get out of the car and look at it from another view. If
mm,
you don't know if the headlights busted, you don't know if there's something wrong with the hood. You don't know because you've always been inside of it and it's your car and you love it and it's always been yours. But unless you can look outside of something, you don't truly understand what you're into. So there was that perspective. And also I talked to somebody within the company as well who had actually made it abroad. And she had worked for that same company for 7 years, settled down, got married, had two kids, and then at like 34 was given the opportunity to move. And it was so much more difficult to uproot her life and move over to London. And I realized that no matter what the consequence of spending that money on higher education would be, it was better than spending that same amount of time trying to get to a place that I could take my own initiative to explore myself. So it was a good way to get the visa to go over there, and I'll be moving to Belgium September 1st. I'll be doing which is nuts. I'll be starting a master's degree in global supply chain management at Antwerp Management School. And it'll also be about an hour and a half away from my girlfriend who is over there, which I gotta say is a bit of a push too. She's a little smarty. She's getting a PhD in molecular biology, so I'm trying to keep up at all times.
yeah.
Um, so like kind of right now, that's kind of where I'm sitting at. In about a week, a little over a week, I will be heading off to Colombia for 6 weeks.
Mm,
Um, Cheap living, fun times in between gigs. I always encourage everybody, if you're in between jobs or opportunities and you've got a little bit of extra money left over, you can't replace an adventure in your 20s. So
mm.
heading over there for quite a while, exploring the sites, and yeah, and trying to figure it all out, man.
Yeah.
But I was definitely in the last podcast. I was in the stage of trying to figure out what to do,
Mm.
and now I'm kind of laughing because I'm in the stage where I'm dealing with the consequences of my
Yeah.
actions and my choices. Which, yeah, always right now I'm feeling great about them, but you know
Dude,
when
that's
you actually
beautiful.
end up taking that path, you have to deal with what's along the road. So
Dude, that's beautiful though, because like that's such a like a full circle. Like that's the steps that you take kind of in your living in a short period of time, dude. It's freaking amazing. How are you? Because you're leaving in like a couple months, yeah. How is it? Are you like anticipating? Is it like hard to be present where you are right now because you're thinking of all these things that you're gonna do when you move, or are you still working? Are you staying busy? What is it like now, when you have this
yeah,
big thing happening in a couple months?
yeah, that's a really good question, man. Because Normally, people think like you make a big decision and then the next day you're on a plane and your life begins.
Right.
But I've been locked in since January,
Mm,
and I'm not good at patience. Patience is always something that people learn. And originally I ended up meeting my current girlfriend over 2.5 years ago. And so I've been kind of scheming about a way to get close to her. And then I started the process of studying for the GMAT in October. And so it has been a very, very interesting balance. I'm currently in Charlotte, North Carolina, is where I was born and raised. I love this city. It's been one of the top 10 fastest growing cities in the US since 2014, dude. So I've seen my hometown just completely change in so many beautiful ways. And one of the things that changed a lot for me was as soon as I got that acceptance letter, every time I stepped outside of my door, I looked at it in a different way. Not as something I took for granted, but something that I'm going to leave. And that's even for that one change of mentality of like looking at that skyline on the way to work. um that's been an experience, man, for sure. And during that time I had a job, and it was a bit tough, man, because it was a 2-year rotational program. I was going to end around this time, but I was already locked in for the next adventure, and I couldn't really tell anybody about it at the company. Which,
mm,
when you're working a job, you spend a lot of time talking to the same people, and they always ask you like, "What you gonna do? Like, how are you liking it here? Like, what's your vision?" And I
mm.
couldn't tell them it's to get the hell out.
Right, right.
So I had to put on a mask for quite a while, which I'm a pretty authentic person. I tend to believe, and that was pretty tough in the moment. But yeah, I mean, I had kind of pre-prepared for this in a lot of ways mentally, and a lot of that has been really investing in spending time with the people that I knew would be more difficult to see later.
Mm,
As a nature of where we are in life, most people move pretty far away, or at least a little bit away from where you guys all met. And so I've got
mm.
friends in DC, New York, Denver, Dallas, Tampa, Colorado Springs, and I have spent a lot of time and a lot of money bouncing around all those different places, kind of on a mini US tour,
Yeah.
to see everybody before I leave, trying to convince them to come see me over in Europe when they end up
Mm,
bouncing over the pond. And yeah, it's been interesting because it's a very, very slow process, but it's been one I've been very intentional about. And I think the overarching feeling has been wanting to like slow down and at the same time smash the fast forward button as hard as physically
mm.
possible, which is a very interesting dynamic and to
Right,
be
built-in
in.
paradox. Yeah. Dude, that's amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm so excited for you, bro. It's gonna be so cool. I'm so excited to hear
Yeah.
your stories because you're such a great storyteller, and all the stories that you're gonna get out there. It's just, you know, you're gonna soar, man. You're gonna soar. All right, now I want to dive into the past because I'm sure we've talked about this. I always find when I connect with people and I really get to understand them, it always stems from hearing them at a space in childhood, because those formative years, 0 to 7, is where you kind of build that software, hardware, that builds a foundation for you later on, and that's cultivated by our family, our parents, our siblings, our environment, our religion, belief systems, like all of that is formulated at that young age. And then I just love to hear what that beginning life was like for you, what that family dynamic was like, what it was like growing up, who were you at that time, and then you get middle school is
Mhm.
a certain season, a certain chapter, then you get high school is a certain chapter, then college is a certain chapter. So in your own words, it's a loaded question, but if you had to share kind of where you were to how you got to where you are now, what would you say?
Oh, dude, yeah.
Yeah,
So whole life story is
whole
basically what
life
you're going
story.
after. All
Yeah.
right. Well, I guess if you asked, then I guess I'll ask you to buckle in too. But it is fascinating because um, before I start, I'd like to start with a quote from Matthew McConaughey, which is a hilarious, man. I read the Green Lights, and I've seen him in a bunch of different movies. But he had a quote one time that when I initially heard it, I thought it was probably the most egotistical thing I've ever heard, and then over time, I've realized it was brilliant.
Hmm.
And he said in his speech, he said, um, "Be somebody that would impress both." You in 10 years and 10-year-old you.
Hmm.
And when I think back to that kid, 10 years old and younger, we can go even younger than that.
Mm.
I think he would probably have, I don't even know. He was a huge introvert. I'll start that way. When I was a really young kid, I was the kid who read at recess. That's kind of the avid reader coming in. I was obsessed with books and stories and adventures. Had a hard time making friends, and then funny enough, everything ended up changing when my neighbor, his name is Peter Smith, it's the most default name of all time. Promise the guy's a real dude. He moved from South Africa, and one fun fact about that was that he is actually the third Smith family in a row to inhabit that house while I was growing up. And so it was a very unique situation where he moved to a new country, new house. And I was the one who gave him a tour of his old house. He's like, yeah, like come in, let me show you around. I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm gonna show you around. Here's a secret closet. Here's how to get into the attic. And he was just like, what the fuck? So me and him became completely inseparable.
Mm.
We did everything together. And that was really my first friend. That was probably around second grade. But before that, really kind of unable to make friends. I was quite shy, definitely a mama's boy. And then getting to around the middle school time, that's when I think a lot of things really started to expand for me. So I ended up going to a private Christian school, which is quite funny looking back, because it did change a lot of who I was. I'm very thankful for it. But I literally asked my parents if I could go there because I went to a PE class. It was fun. Like it was
Yeah.
the most arbitrary, I guess, reasoning from younger me. But they sent me there, and that's when I was a huge athlete before that. I had swam since I was 4, five football since 6. So sports were a huge part of my life, and the ability to expand into different parts of myself during that was a huge defining moment for me. I started playing the trombone. I started doing football, like seriously, swimming, lacrosse, track and field, everything. And that's when I believe, came into my own a lot. It was a chance for me to, instead of using my skills at talking and conversating and making friends, which was pretty low at that point, I was able to use my abilities.
Mm.
And I think that's where, at least from a very young age, I started to associate myself with what I was capable of doing, how I could contribute. And for somebody who didn't have a whole lot of social connection, that became a lot of my self-worth. Now I ended up growing to 6 foot tall in middle school, so sports were no problem. But that was a good ego boost, for sure. And then around eighth grade, I got a chance that I probably, looking back, it's ridiculous that they would offer this to me. But I got a chance to be an ambassador. So obviously, private school, you don't just get placed somewhere. You kind of get sold the idea of going to one of these institutions to, better yourself, have more opportunities, better shot at college. And so I became somebody who, at a very early age, would walk around prospective families and kind of sell it. Here's the stadium, here's the gym, here's the cafeteria. Got any questions? So I went from somebody who, again, kid who read in the playground, to giving straight up adults and their families tours of school, and that transition was kind of, it made my head spin, honestly, looking back. And I one of the things I picked up, again, just like the ability to speak, and my association with my abilities and my social worth. um if I wasn't pressed, or if I wasn't growing, it felt like a waste of time, and that gave me so many opportunities to kind of spread my wings, figure out what was comfortable for me. And um I associate a lot of who I am to that growing time. I got a really solid group of friends, um, and that kind of pushed me into high school. But before we go on to that, like, any questions on that? I know I got quite quick through all of that and gave you some details,
Oh,
but
dude, no, I love that. I mean, if you wanted to touch on like, there's this one podcast I listen to where they say, what it was like, when were you born and raised, and like, what does your folks do for a living? Because I
yeah,
always find that like in middle school specifically, I reflect on me, I reflect on my friends, and honestly, like we're so young, where like my mom is still dressing me, and like
yeah,
I'm kind of just a sponge. Everything my dad believes, I believe. Everything my mom believes, like I take on. It's not until I grow up, and then really wasn't until I was like 18 and then moved on my own where I started thinking for myself. Some things
Right.
a lot earlier, but in middle school, we're really kind of just a shadow of our parents in a lot of ways. So I find if we like when I started to understand and meet my friends' parents, I'm like, oh, I get it, you know. So what were
Yeah.
your parents like what did they
100%.
do or
So yeah, they were awesome, man. No, I think, and there's a really funny quote. I wish I remember references better. But it said, yeah, the first 20 years of my life was learning who I was supposed to be, and then the next 20 years was undoing everything the first 20 years did to me.
Mhm. Yep.
And it's funny because you have to build a foundation. Of who you are and what your belief systems are, but yeah, they can change pretty dramatically. Parent wise, so I've got I was very fortunate to grow up in a house with two parents. Both of them came from a sales background. So my mom initially went into journalism, somehow found a gig in pharmaceutical sales, and she did that very successfully until I was about 3 years old, and she was like, "Screw this! I just want to be a mom." So so she dropped out of that rat race, and then she had my sister. So she's been kind of a little cheerleader for us ever since.
Hmm.
Crazy good cook. I mean, I've been spoiled my entire life. And on my dad's side, he started off in sales as well. He started off with printers. God help him. I don't know how you sell printers on that. I mean, every day just hustling. He went from that to on-site construction sales for like power tools, which is a whole different beast in itself. I mean, he got played, dude. Absolutely played. He had to buy his own van to he didn't get any compensation for any miles, and most of the times he would just get called to construction sites to fix their tools, and then they wouldn't buy shit. So he did that, and then he went through about three different startups that all had great potential, that he was going to sell for. All of them flopped,
Hmm.
and then at that point he's like, you know what, I need to figure this out. So he went into medical sales. He started doing at home respiratory systems, then moved from that to microscopes. And now he is a salesman for the GE medical division. He does C-arm sales, which is like the imaging machines that you go into, for MRIs, like the surgical stuff, where they put the scope in and kind of figure out what's happening as the surgery is progressing. So he's had a very interesting career, all in sales, but at least the stuff he's been involved in with sales couldn't be more different. But yeah, well, ironically, both medical sales, which I think rubbed off on me a little bit. Like I didn't know how to make friends, but I knew how to negotiate.
Right.
So it's kind of a funny thing.
Hmm. Yeah. And I'm curious about this. Because some of the things are very specific about the stories that you know about your dad, like how he got played in that period of life at that one sales gig. Was your dad
Yeah.
open about talking about things that he went through? Because I feel like a lot of people don't know a lot of stuff about their parents, you know? Like if they had
It
to like tell those stories, like I feel like a lot of people don't know. Was he open? And like was your mom open about sharing those stories?
Yeah, it is funny. You have to work sometimes to pull out the parent lore
Yeah.
for sure. Normally it's when the wine comes out, but but yeah, they've been pretty open about stuff. Although it is funny on my mom's side, I feel like I was quite aware of what was going on because she was intimately involved in the church that I grew up in, and my school as well. So she was the PTA mom, and she was in charge of
Mm,
fucking everything.
yeah.
She was making the cookies, organizing the events. And so yeah, it's funny you say a lot of times you end up to be a shadow of your parents. So even no matter what I did in high school, middle school, elementary school, I was definitely Mama Vaughn's boy. Like I was classified as like an extension of her. She was crazy. And then on my dad's side, yeah, he was a traveling salesman is the way I would put it. So he was gone a lot. He would normally be back for dinners, but early mornings, late nights. But he would come through, and we connected over like little things, obviously football, fishing, cars. But yeah, I would say they were pretty open about stuff too. And as I've gotten older and they've gotten older, freaking old now. They're more open about sharing, stories from college, experiences that they've had that surprised me. And I would definitely encourage anybody with parents that are still living and still around, like ask them just like very blunt questions. Like, what's the best time that you had in college? Just throw out random stuff that like they haven't talked about in a while. See their eyes light up because they've got some secrets, man. And normally they're pretty good tales.
Mhm.
So
Dude, my older sister gifted my mom and my dad. There's this company that made this book based. It's like a life book, so it's like a journal kind of with
yeah,
guided questions. Pretty much just of like your life story. So it's like specifically for a mother. And it would be like, what was your childhood like? What were your parents like? Like, what was grandma and grandpa like, kind of thing. And just sharing, the ins and outs of childhood and things that we don't know. Dude, my mom did the whole shebang. She turned it into a book.
dang, oh
What a
my
legend, dude. So
god,
like those stories like that I had like no idea, some jaw-dropping stuff. I mean, she's an open book, so I know a lot of the stories anyways, but like that's so cool. And so for anyone, I think it's a great gift, like because sometimes it's like hard to find gifts for our parents sometimes, in Christmas, but it's a
definitely,
really cool gift. Took like 2 years to do, but dude, slow and steady. And then we can take that and we can pass it down to our kids and they can know more about their grandma and know about their great grandma, like just really, really kind of cool stuff. So the more you know, man. Um, it's really amazing. It's really amazing. And then before I let you move on, I just wanted to I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to comment about the introversion. Dude, and the athleticism, bro. I share that so deeply with you. And I
yeah,
also it's so fascinating, bro. I feel like a lot of performers kind of were introverts, and I don't even love the labels introvert and extrovert because there were different moments in my life where I felt extroverted and I felt introverted. But I think innately,
yeah.
if I was in a community that I didn't feel totally safe myself, I would fall into the go back into, my shell. But there's introspection there, there's kept quiet. And then when you kind of like do the work and you have all these amazing pieces and then mentors and parents and people to model after, and then you start finding I always find when you have an introvert and you give them something that they're deeply passionate about, bro,
Oh,
it's the
you can't get them to
coolest thing.
shut
It's
up.
the coolest thing.
Can't get them to shut up.
I
And
don't know
I think, well, I think also on the introverted extroverted side, I think I actually kind of misused that label a little bit. I think all of us have become too smart for our own good. I think we, self diagnose in a lot of ways, but I think initially most people are ambiverts. Period. I mean, the people who are diehard extroverts and diehard introverts are by necessity on a very very small percentage of the population, and it depends on if you're talking about just overall like ambient social anxiety, which as a young kid I feel like most people do have,
Mhm.
um, and but there's also like perceived competence within social groups. So if you have like for instance my girlfriend is a molecular biologist. She is completely out of her element. We're talking to marketing people,
Mhm.
or finance people, and she'd probably not say a word the whole time. But get her with some biologists and you can't get her to shut up. It's more about association with the group you're in and the comfortability with the subjects. Like you can get the home the prom queen and then put her in a D&D group and she's just like, what? And she doesn't say a word, and she shrinks back into a corner. It's a lot of situational stuff. But
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally. All right, brother. All right, now, so I feel like, did you leave off around like high school or wherever you
yeah,
want to
yeah,
take
yeah.
it from there? Yeah.
Yeah, dude, this one, and this is what I'm most thankful for. This is where my interest in psychology came from because I think a lot of religious schools need to do a better job of this. But so seventh grade, eighth grade, again, I went to a Christian school, and we mostly in seventh grade we went over Old Testament, eighth grade New Testament, which there's some bonker stuff in the Bible, dude. That's a humongous book, with like over 40 authors. So there's some wild shit.
Mhm.
But we went through that pretty briefly, and then we did a very interesting thing in high school where we went another deep dive. The freshman year was kind of things we missed from both compounding elements of the Bible, and then sophomore year we did logic. We did basic logic and debate, which is very interesting. So instead of learning more about the religion that the school is based off of, we learned how to argue,
Mhm.
like we learned about fallacies, ways that arguments could be created that created basically a meaningless stance on something. And so we did a lot of funny debates, like was the moon landing real? We split into groups, try to figure out like was it real, was it not real?
Mm.
And then we all at the end of stuff like that, we broke down the actual elements of the arguments, and then we moved from that into basically world religious studies. So I had the chance. This is my first really exposure to anything outside of Christianity. And we talked about Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism. We went into Islam, Judaism, Christianity, and it was a very, very interesting, dive into it. But again, it was obviously a little bit biased from the perspective of this is a Christian school. Like this is one we believe in. These are the other options. Don't choose them. And then we went into after that, it was a very interesting transition into what was called apologetics. Now, apologetics is basically the defense of faith. So you have a knowledge of the religion that you grew up with and associate with. You have the ability to debate and argue. Then you have a wider understanding of the overall worldly perspective on religion and different perspectives on that. And then you went straight into how to use logic and debate to defend what you believe. And then at the very end of it, they made us write a 17-page dissertation on what you believed and why. And it didn't have to be Christianity. You can do atheism. But man, it was a grind. And I am incredibly thankful for it. I don't know where it is now. But a lot of that's changed since then. And so
What was your answer? What was your big piece?
so I mean, after
Have in
17
mind.
pages, it was pretty much it was Christianity. I didn't go into in depth into why I didn't believe in the other ones, which would have been quite interesting looking back. A lot of it was um, like free will versus determinism. Um, and so that's where I started getting a little bit more into like psychology, the theories of the unconscious versus the conscious, trying to understand the balance between those. But I couldn't believe that everything was predetermined going into it, but I also believe that allowing everything to be associated with free will was a bit ridiculous too. So most of that dissertation was about trying to find the balance of it, and then kind of using scriptural references to kind of prove that point. But yeah, I was kind of on the top of my game at that point, and
Hmm.
then going from that straight into college. But I also another thing that was quite interesting for me during that time was, um, as I said before, a lot of the physical attributes that I had, and the accomplishments that I associated with myself with created the friend groups that I became very close to. And one of those friend groups is also um, happened to be very, very smart. I was not the smartest kid going into it. And all the friends that I really, really enjoyed being around at the very beginning were always in the top class. So I always felt like I was trying to catch up, always felt like I was trying to push it a little bit. And I'm thankful because all those AP classes let me graduate a little bit earlier and start the journey that kind of I'm on now, which is a crazy full circle moment that we can get to later. But
Bro, that's so cool, dude. I mean, I swear I didn't start thinking for myself until like after college, you know?
yeah,
And because it was like every assignment was I couldn't connect it to my personal life. Some of them were interesting, like
not at
history
all.
classes, communication classes, but there was such a disconnect. And then, you're growing up and you're in sports and you're around people where it's like this doesn't really matter, like who really cares? And you're kind of just like, I'll figure it out later, I'll figure it out later. Um, and it wasn't until college where I took like a communication class where I started learning things. I took a sociology class. I started learning things from like, well, this is real. This applies. I'm reading stuff that this is happening, and it felt current, and it felt I can apply this, and I'm like, I want to learn more. And that
Hmm.
I didn't feel that at all in high school, dude. And that could have been a me thing, could have been an education thing. It was just a mixed bag. I think if I had gone back with the awareness and the mindset that I had now, I would have taken advantage of it. I don't think I took advantage of it at that time. But to have the opportunity to approach religion in that way of not being saying you have to talk about Christianity, this, that, and you're in this box and this is the only way. You have the option to explore and then choose. That's so cool, man. And that creates like a foundation, a work ethic to be able to explore your own truths and the way that you see the world in a really cool way from a young age. And dude, I mean, it all tracks, bro. Like where you are right now, and hearing like kind of the idea of not wanting to be the smartest person in the room. Like Kobe Bryant playing ball with like high schoolers when he was like in eighth,
Yeah.
playing overseas and just not scoring a basket like the entire scrimmage, just always fighting upstream, and that made him who he was today, you know. And so it's kind of cool. I love seeing those correlations, you know, because your work ethic is incredible and you're clearly intellectually incredibly smart and charismatic, and hearing that from your parents. So it's cool. It's cool because we had talked deeply, and I like know who you are, but it's cool hearing all that stuff, man. That's why I love this.
Yeah, and I think it is funny because a lot of people overstate moments in a life associated to this one particular experience. But as going through that from a mental perspective and for a philosophy standpoint, I think that was a huge growing moment for me. But also, I mentioned very early on in this podcast that I associate myself a lot with my abilities, and the first time that was tested was freshman year. And again, it's so funny to talk about middle school because it just doesn't matter now. But in
Right,
that time, it's a huge deal.
right.
So I had come within like 0.005 seconds of breaking the like all-time middle school record for butterfly. So I was for a middle schooler, an eighth grader, I was like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
I'm the best. I'm the best. The next day, I go to lacrosse practice and blow my ACL out the next day. So that was like, and it was a weird moment. Like it kind of pinged. I kind of felt like I just pulled a muscle in my knee, and then like, no, you're like, he just did this with my knee. He's like, your ACL is gone, man. I'm like, what? Like, no way. And then so I was like, well, what now? So I started a 6 month recovery process. And then, I kind of lived with that for the rest of high school, like a little bit of insecurity around what I was able to do physically, but I still trusted myself. Like there was still swimming was still there, didn't have to worry about that at all. Started excelling in that a lot more. And then I became stronger than I'd ever been at that point. I was killing it in the gym, on the field. Got up to team captain on basically every single sport I played. And then senior year, it was state championship for football. And I had not only torn my ACL, but I tore my LCL and PCL and meniscus in one play,
Mm.
3 plays into that state championship. And those two experiences ripped me away, at least temporarily, from the association of my ability with myself. And it's weird looking back in that because even though I have been fixed, like my shoulder still feels weird. I had to get that surgically repaired too, put 9 anchors in that because of dislocations. Um, and my knee's okay, but I don't feel comfortable doing some things anymore. And I'm 24, man. Like this is crazy. Like I definitely should be, still on the up and up. But that insecurity with realizing that I could no longer associate myself with my physical self was, I think, above almost anything that I had been through at that point, the realization that I had to kind of identify myself beyond those things.
Yeah.
And I think that anybody who gets injured, nobody ever grows up, that little kid thinking, I'm going to be somebody who's injured. Like, I'm going to be that guy with knee problems. No, nobody wants to be that. Um, and it's weird. It's weird, kind of growing into the issues that come with growing up.
Mm.
Sometimes it's hey, start off in a happy family, things break up. Sometimes it's my knees turn backwards and we got to go under the knife. Sometimes it's we're gonna make a huge move that disrupts, my family, my friend group. Could be a lot of different things, but there's moments along that growth path where significant events come along, and if there hasn't been one yet, you know, shout out, you're lucky.
Mm.
But there's moments to offer that offer you the ability to take a pivot. And I think in those moments, that was also a kind of a huge pivot for me, and realizing again, like I'm not my body, I'm not my physical capabilities. And to learn that at a very young age was quite humbling, I think.
Yeah, man. I connect to that so deeply. I reflect on my life and I look at those moments of pivots. I call them awakenings because I feel like there's these like um canon, like if you like Spider-Verse verbiage, like canon events, you know, and they're usually
Hmm.
moments where it's just like Dark Night of the Soul, and a couple years Dark Night of the Soul, you know, like things that just uproot you. You think you're going this way, and then the universe goes, nope, you're going this way. And
Yeah.
for me, like I got mono 2 days before our season opener, junior year in basketball. playing the best ball in my life. Like that was our team. Like we were so good that year, and I missed that whole year, dude. And I was pretty much derailed, and I went down hard, dude. Like
Yeah.
I was like, this is my identity. This is it. Like I don't know who I am without this. School sucked. Practice, like I just shot around. Like I wasn't able to be with the guys. I wasn't able to go out to parties. Like it sucked. And in that moment, I couldn't see. Like my tunnel vision. I couldn't see anything outside. I couldn't see the good. I was in such a pity party. Like it was so gnarly, and navigating that was so challenging. And then as I'm able to remove myself and look back and see it from an aerial perspective, I see the reason for it. I see the lesson from it, and it all happened in like a super divine way. And I kind of call like those moments awakenings, and it's usually like the hardest moments in life. And I always find
Yeah.
big injuries like life uplifting, uprooting moments as like that kind of canon event, that kind of awakening. Like Bethany Hamilton could have been the best female surfer of all time, probably would have won a bunch of trophies and accolades, but instead she gets attacked by a shark, loses an arm. Now is still a baller surfer, but now she's an icon, a public figure, can connect and move so many more people, so many more lives had she still had that arm.
Yeah.
So sometimes I always find everything happens for reasons, but I want to ask, what was it like when you were in it? Like the first ACL tear, you're at
Mm.
6 months, and then you're like, all right, I'm back, I'm back, I'm back. And then it happens again, and not only again, but it's like senior year. And it's like it's a little bit more brutal because there's multiple injuries. What were those periods like? And then what was it like getting beyond it? And then have you like reflected on it and like saw the reason, saw the silver lining?
Yeah, well, I'm still pissed. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I I had my first injury felt surreal. Because it was the first time I'd had to put brakes on anything. I mean,
Mm,
I definitely had the pedal to the metal for quite a while. And I was really doing well in a lot of different areas. That first time, it was interesting because I felt like people rallied around me for that. I felt like there was a lot of support. I got back in 6 months, which is not unheard of with ACLs, but normally it's an 8 to 12 month process. I got in six. I thought it was awesome. It gave me some insecurity going forward about what I was capable of. But I leaned into jazz band. I leaned into the emission stuff. I leaned into the things that didn't require athletics. But by fall of that year, same year, because again, this was early January. By fall, I was fine. So that was I took on the process of going into rehab as a sport in and of itself, which was it was a good mindset. I really enjoyed it, and I pushed myself, and in a lot of ways, I felt like um, it it helped me grow as a person. I was thankful for that. Funny enough, I would not change my first ACL injury. Even if I had to go back and not get injured, I probably would have kept that because that growth was huge.
yeah.
And the second time was completely different. I'd gone all the way through that. I'd come back better than before, and state championship, we ended up winning it for the team. And I basically ended up spending. I went from that to a Waffle House with a couple friends, and they left early, and I was sat there by myself
Mhm.
on a Friday. And I was like, "Fuck, man! Like, I'm gonna have to do this all over again." And there was no rallying this time. Nobody cared. Because at that point, people are already trying to figure out where they're going to college. People already by that time, there's a big difference between the beginning of high school and the end of high school. The groups are created. I mean, I was carrying my own damn food tray with crutches in the cafeteria. Like it was a pretty isolating event, which was wild because you had thought over those how many years people. I would say the group that I was with, I started around six. It was about 6 years, and they every single one of them got into Chapel Hill except for me as well. So it became a thing where the group I associated with kind of left me to do my own thing. And that was not fun in a lot of ways. I missed out on senior trips. I missed out on moments. Missed out on beach trips. Missed out on a lot of things that originally were supposed to bring those people that you went to high school with together to like get you through those points where you were apart. I didn't really have any of that.
Mhm.
And at that point, like it's kind of sad to say, but senior year was all just for me. Like I can't wait for this to end.
Yeah.
And most people have the kind of opposite experience of like the high school fever, like, oh, this is the best it's ever gonna like all my friends are close and I just didn't have any of that. And that dichotomy was quite interesting. I pushed even farther into classes. I did what I could. I think I began associating a lot with adults. And I already had been doing that a lot. But I found that I spent a lot of time with the admissions people, a lot of time learning from people who are older than me, a lot of time with teachers. Um, and that helped me mature in a way, but I also think premature matureness in a way can be a bit of a curse too. It's like I felt like what most people should have been by the end of college, I grew into quite quickly before I even left for it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so unfortunately not positive. I try to go back and bring some things out of it, but it almost felt like it put me back at that like elementary stage of like, oh, I've got myself. So what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so a forced period of introspection, but again, looking back, you can't really change things. You can only wish you can. So I think it impacted me in a lot of ways, subconsciously more than it did consciously. And it's interesting to see and maybe look back of what those experiences created for me in that moment and where that kind of took me trajectory wise. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
maybe not as happy, man. But also, that's another thing about life is like every period doesn't have to be great. And you don't have to make, something out of nothing. You can just admit sometimes it sucked. And
Yeah.
that's okay too.
That's true, man. That's true. And you never know. Like you still got a lot of life to live and something might happen and people are like, oh, I get it. I get it. I get it. I love
Yeah.
Sean Stevenson's my guy, and just the health space. And he has a story. He's big on, he has like a book called Sleep Smarter, a book called Eat Smarter, like big nutritionalist, not a guy who's just doing the science and the peer review studies and bringing that knowledge to the public, but also doing it. Like he looks like an athlete, which is really
Yeah.
cool. But he was, growing up playing track. He had like a degenerative bone disease when he was like 20.
Oh
Something
God.
gnarly, something that like he's like the doctor's like you have the spine of like a 60-year-old man, like something like that. And
Oh God.
he just didn't accept it and started making changes and completely healed his body by lifestyle, by food, by thoughts and how he moved throughout the world. And now he's bringing that to people and changing lives in so many different ways. So I know you're saying like you're 24 and I shouldn't be moving like this. Like you never know what could happen in like bringing awareness and finding healing modalities for people who are struggling with their shoulder, struggling with knees and stuff like that. So um it's gonna be cool though, dude. It's gonna be, yeah, and you're doing it, dude. You're already taking steps in the right direction and moving and traveling and got so many cool things on the horizon. And I want to talk about
Oh yeah.
traveling, dude, because um, one thing that I actually really love that you've talked about so far is growth. Because
Yeah.
I that changed my life when I started applying the desire for growth and the passion for growth into studies. And I wasn't
Mm.
studying to grow when I was in high school and in college. Once I was studying to grow and like learning to grow, you get antsy, dude, when you're kind of like I have coworkers, bro, at my restaurant who are just like, I work 10 hours a day, I go home and watch TV. I'm like, I can't do that, dude. It's like if
Oh
you're
my
really
God.
working on yourself, it's there's something there. So I just wanted to acknowledge you for that because the one I feel like growth mindset, if you have that skill, then it impacts and escalates and accelerates every other skill that you try to learn and any knowledge you're trying to gain. So taking that with you is just it's amazing, bro. And then but travel, dude, um, constantly seeking growth. And I think one of the fastest ways to grow, dude, is through travel and not just
I
traveling,
agree.
reaching out to your buddies in different parts of the United States, but also other countries to other cultures. And I'd love to hear your perspective. I don't know if you traveled a lot outside the country before this move to Germany, but what is your relationship to travel? What does travel mean to you? Reaching out to cultures. Because I know you're excited about moving to a new environment, a new culture. But what is that? What does travel mean for you?
Yeah, I think that's such a funny question because, and again, everything kind of goes full circle. I was talking about how um, spending time with high achievers in high school forced me to try to stay in the classes they were in, and all of them were AP classes, advanced placement. And I built up so many credits that instead of going through like the initial, math, history, science, I skipped right into business school. I went straight freshman year, first class was business. And I got so far ahead during that time, and maybe some of that was actually due to my injuries, just like literally trying to do the hardest possible curriculum to distract me. That if I had not gotten a second major, I would have graduated in like 2.5, 3 years, which was ridiculous. So I ended up picking up I ended up doing like a business, and this will all get to the point well. But I got a bachelor's initially in business administration. I was going to graduate like 2.5 years. I'm like, dude, I'm not doing that. Not after COVID. I'm not leaving during COVID.
Mhm.
So I ended up picking up a second bachelor's in supply chain, which I am so thankful for, Andrew, because now that is what I'm using to go to Europe with.
Mm.
Had that not happened, this would not happen either. And the first experience that I've ever had with somebody international went all the way back to my first friend from South Africa.
Mm.
Um,
Right, Mr. Smith.
and yeah, the Smiths. So it started very young. And then when I got to college, I didn't really meet anybody international until quite later. And it's a really funny story, and I love to tell it all the time. I was at a bar on a Wednesday night Jake's. It's a bar in South Carolina. I'm a Gamecock, so a lot of my stories come from that area. Got the little cup,
Yes,
so
sir.
what are you gonna do? Spurs up. And there was a really cute girl sitting at the bar, and she wasn't my girlfriend. She's not the girl I'm with right now, but her name is Nina, and we became good friends over the semester. But walked up to her, and I said, I was like, "Hey, can I introduce myself?" Turns out that she was from the Netherlands. I was like, "Oh, that's so cool." And I started talking to her. She introduced me to Pauline, Koss, and Boss, which are now four of my best friends over in Europe. I've talked to them consistently since that time. But it turns out that they had just gotten off of a plane, and their circadian rhythm was so messed up,
Yeah.
and they're like, "I'm not going to sleep forever. We want to find a party." And I'm like, okay, like it's a Wednesday. I don't know if there's any parties going on this beginning of the semester, but I was like, I've got a house. It's got a big backyard, little fire pit, we could put some tiki torches, got some liquor. Well, that's some fun. Like, why not? She's like, oh my God, this sounds great. Can I invite my friends? And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, invite your friends. Dude, she turns around and she yells at the whole bar, hey guys, it's time to go. And 85 Europeans turn around. And I'm like, what in the hell did I just do to myself? So I'm like, all right, give me like 20 minutes. I'm going to go set it up. I'm going to text you, and then y'all can come over. So I walk in, and my roommates are both stoned as a bat. And I'm like, hey guys, reverse D Day. Like, we got to get going right now. 85 Europeans are coming over here. So we get the whole house ready, like 15, 20 minutes, maybe even less time, get the tiki torches lit, everything cleaned up, music going. And we stayed up till 7 o'clock in the morning, man. 7 o'clock. I had the best time in the world. We had the cops called on us at like 3:30 in the morning, and I packed all of those Europeans like sardines into a 3 bedroom, one bath house. Left a couple of them in the back. The cops came. They're like, "There's been a noise complaint. What's going on?" I'm like, "Clearly nothing. There's nobody here anymore." Wink, wink. Go in the backyard, check it out for yourself. Like two Dutchies with some beers.
Uh-huh.
And after that, we just became inseparable, man. I basically kind of adopted all of them, took them to Savannah, took them to Charleston, took them to the mountains, took them on boats, and I think at that time, I had been with the same group of people for quite a while during college since sophomore year, and I was kind of ready for a change, and they were just a breath of fresh air in a very unique way. And everywhere they went was just electric because they were there to party. Like it's really when you meet an entire group of people whose just entire agenda is just like trying to mess around to find
Having a good
out,
time, yeah.
just having a good time. It was so great, and I already had my job lined up at that point. And I was lucky because I was graduating a semester early, even at that point. So at the end of all that, they were like, "Hey, really appreciate it. You should totally come visit us." I'm like, "All right, cool. When? Like when? I've got time." And they're like, "Oh, wait. Okay, serious. Now we got to plan something." So we all decided to meet at a festival called King's Day. or Kingsland. It's over in the Netherlands. It's basically St. Patrick's Day if it was orange.
Mhm.
So I made a fake resume of 3 years of bartending experience, got hired at a spot in Colombia during the 3 months before I was going to visit there to save up some money, which was an experience all in itself. Like never been behind a bar in my entire life. I went from, you know, that to making like blueberry, limoncello mules. It's awesome. Love that spot. I was a terrible I'm not a terrible bartender, but I was a horrendous waiter. Definitely do not belong in the food service industry. Shout out. I heard a joke that like people our age, if you didn't work in a restaurant, is like the equivalent of the '70s if you didn't go to Nam. Like nobody respects you. Like you got to be in the hustle. Um, so yeah, I reconnected with them, man, and that was my first time ever outside of the country, and I did it by myself. And I happened to, so I was like, yeah, I only spent about 2 weeks traveling around the Netherlands, which is crazy because again, hopefully my girlfriend's there and I'll move there eventually. Fell in love with the spot, and then I decided to take about a month to go around Europe or go around Spain, and it's so eye opening, man. It's so eye opening in so many ways. Like living out of a backpack, realizing how little you need to get along, realizing how friendly people truly are, even in places you've never been, even places you'll only be for a couple days. The stories, the adventures you hear from people and the lifestyles, the different choices that people have made and what they want to do with their lives, and the amount of people who didn't have any clue but just wanted to have a good time while they were figuring it out. It's easy again when you're in the same group of people for a long time, whether it's business folk, actors, painters, musicians, coders. You can be with that group for quite a while, but you realize that when you step out of that particular group and you expose yourself to a lot of different life choices and life paths, it really makes you kind of think back on what you're interested in doing and why. Um, I think that was probably the biggest growth moment. It's just hostels. Again, just meeting people of different types and different ways and different ages who you share a little bit of a mindset, and for that moment, the same interest in connecting and sharing.
Mhm. That's beautiful, man. I was just smiling the whole time, dude. I love those stories, man. It's all it takes is one event, one person to completely change our story around what we think we know and what we've been conditioned to believe. Like there was this girl I knew, we had the same communication class, and she was a volleyball player from Denmark, and she did this one
No way.
presentation. Yeah, she was so cool, dude. So sweet, so down to earth. And she gave this presentation about how Denmark's just like the nicest place on earth. Like studied wise, and how people would just leave their babies like outside an equivalent like a coffee shop and
Yeah,
not
yeah, I've seen that.
like yeah, and just go in and then come back like no fear. Just the system is so different, and it's crazy how it's so refreshing because it's tragically so abnormal in the States for some reason. I mean, there
Oh
are
my
definitely
God,
pockets,
yeah.
there are definitely families who are doing it right, who are leading with love and light, but there's so much division, there's so much. I mean, it's really a systematic problem, but it's rare to like, and that's why we all like need. I'm just such an advocate for travel, and I haven't even traveled a ton. Like I've been to Costa Rica, I've been to Panama, but there's
Hey,
so much
Costa
I want to do.
Rica.
Costa
I
Rica,
love that
pura vida,
spot, man. Pura
dude.
vida, baby.
Like when you go out there, it bursts a bubble of like all your stories and all your beliefs
Hmm.
because what you think is right here is wrong there, and what's right there is wrong. Like and then you stop judging. It's just, bro, that's so amazing. It's so cool that you had that experience. Like, what was it, dude? I can't even imagine what it must have been like to be like, oh yeah, you and like five of you, like your friends, maybe come over. We can like have a few drinks and have fun. Then 85 people just show up with a different energy, dude. That's
Dude,
dream, bro.
it was wild, man. It really, really was. And there's a bit of a sobering example, but I think one that needs to be said. When they came over, like they were the creme de la creme. Like everybody wanted to hang out with them. There wasn't a party they couldn't get into. And there was one of the guys. He was kind of the lead European. Called him
Mhm.
Adam. The dude was sweet. Dude was sweet. He was like a 6'5", like just absolutely shredded. Kind of got the same hair as you, kind of fluffy on the top, always like typical European, wore his little satchel with him everywhere. And he was the man. He was on top of everything. If I wanted the Europeans to come somewhere, I would just text him.
Mhm.
He was on top of the world. And then he went back over to England, and he started a finance job. and he got disassociated from kind of lifestyle that he was living over here. It's such a high, you're a new country, you feel like a celebrity, and then you go back to a place that's kind of cold and rainy. I've heard a lot of comparisons between the U.S. and the U.K., and they're very over the U.S. Like Elon could not have existed in the UK. Let's just put it that way. Like he over here in the US, he's like, I want to colonize Mars. I'm like, screw it, man. You can do it. Over in the UK, they're like, I don't know what this man's on. Like it's very and it's a strange thing because the city of London is a very, very rich financial district, and the rest of the UK is honestly like
Right.
not that well off. So it's a very interesting dynamic of we go to the city or just kind of sink into it, and he got into a rhythm where he was separated from all his friends. He took a big old opportunity, and he was going to make a lot of money, but it was stressing him out. He felt distant, he felt lonely, and eventually took his life. And I saw somebody who was at the top of his game and loved by everybody to gone in 3 months. And that was one of the things that I realized too after the experiences that I've been through, that the association with anything that is outside of yourself can be a dangerous path to ride, because if it's able to be taken away, um, then it's something you can't rely on. We talked about sports being athletically something that can be taken away from you. Friends can be taken away from you. Um, and status can be taken away from you too. And it's funny to talk about status in terms of just popularity in one semester abroad. But it was enough for him to be crushing enough for him not to be over here anymore. Um, and when that happened, I reconnected with a lot of people around that. And um, yeah, it's I think the opportunity to get outside of yourself is interesting, but always be cognizant of getting too outside of that foundation, and starting to let that slip a little bit. When things are going really, really well, appreciate it, but don't associate with it because it's all transient.
Absolutely. Man, that's heavy. That's
Yeah, he
beautiful.
was the dude. He was
Yeah.
the dude. And
So
and
I'll
and and
picture him.
it's crazy because the way I found out was unbelievable too. I was on the way to a hike. I forget what song it was. Maybe it'll come to me, but it was like it was a song about I miss my friends or something. It's a really good song. Like it's a little bit happy in some circumstances, but the chorus is a bit sad. Is like the only thing I know for sure is I didn't spend enough time with friends. And I sent that to Koss, one of my Dutchy friends, and he's like, dude, he's like, this just hit like so hard. I hope you're doing okay. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, you didn't hear. And I found out that Adam was gone by sending a song, like I shared a song off Spotify with one of my friends, said, I miss my friends. I didn't spend enough time with them. And that he's like, oh yeah, that friend you wanted to spend more time with, now that he's actually not here anymore. And I think about him all the time. Um, so that was another interesting reason for us to all get together and reconnect back at Kingsland, to kind of commemorate him. Um, and that's a wild feeling too, because going through ecstasy with people in other places and cool adventures is one thing, but connecting around a sad event with people who you just met in a place that you have never been, um, that's another part about travel I don't think that many people understand and many people will get, is like not only connecting to the good but the bad.
Hmm.
That brought me together really, and I'm like, man, this world's really small and we all go through the same kind of stuff. That
Hmm.
was a weird moment.
Yeah, man. Death is. I was listening. There's this one culture. I forget who they are, but they're part of their practice is they sit and reflect on death like 5 times a day. And
Yeah.
I was thinking about that because I went through a phase in my life where I was like, I wasn't thinking about suicide, but I was thinking about death a lot because it was very present in certain areas. And there's something really beautiful about how it can bring people together. Like there's yin and yang and everything. Like there's positives and negatives in every single circumstance and event. But there are some events that are overwhelmingly more seemingly negative, and death seems to be one of them. And a lot of us have, the fear of death is it's kind of a thing. But dude, like to leave a legacy behind, the people that he touched, and then everyone from different, like how cool would it be to be like a mother or father? I mean, I can't imagine again how heartbreaking he should be here today, but then to see people from all over the world who knew him, who were moved by him, come together to support him, and you
Yeah.
just connected with so many more people. And death reminds us to live more in the present, to appreciate more people that we love that we don't appreciate on a regular basis. Like it's powerful, dude. It's hard to like focus on the positive because it is like he should be here with us, but there's beauty in it in a strange way, and it's a great reminder, dude. It's a great reminder to keep living the present. And it's something I forget all the time, dude, all the time. And it's not until you experience death personally, whether that's like a loved one in your corner, that it really hits and resonates. Um,
Yeah, I think for me too is like it was interesting because in a lot of ways death kicked off two of my self-chosen adventures because the death of Adam brought me out of college, but I was actually a pallbearer for my grandmother the day I moved into college. And so it's interesting looking back how events like that kind of have carried me into the next part of life, and hopefully this trend ends. I don't want it. I don't want the every time I have to start over somebody to die. That's obviously not what I'm trying to say, but it's um in those ways I carried my grandmother through college with me, and I feel like Adam's one of those guys I've thought about not constantly, but at least once every week, once every 2 weeks. It's a thought that brings it's a thought that brings me sadness, but a reminder that things are transient. And one of the things about yoga and meditation, which is so interesting, is somebody referred to it as the little death that you give yourself. That helps you like ground yourself and bring you back to the present. And I think that's such an interesting way of describing that practice, and the practice of again shedding whatever mask or symbols or status that you may have, and kind of going back to the central, just the breathing, the appreciation, the gratitude. um and I think unfortunately one of those circumstances for Adam was that he couldn't, the grief of losing the status of what he had and the enjoyment of that process was too overwhelming in that moment for him to instead look back at and be appreciative and have gratitude for the moments that he went through, instead of realizing that he can't kind of go back and grab it again. um and going back to travel, man, I would say that I've had those experiences, not particularly with death, but for instance, the Philippines. I was on this place called Camiguin. It's called the Island of Fire, and I ran into the Filipino Army Ranger unit at a local swimming pool, and only one of knew English. But he was like, "Oh, like yeah, you're from the U.S. Like, do you know LeBron?" I'm like, "No, I don't know LeBron." But they were huge into karaoke in the Philippines, and they took me over to a karaoke club, and I kind of, I was feeling myself a little bit, had a couple of the big beers, and I was belting some good stuff out, and then we sang um, a song. I forget exactly. It's Maitsu, I believe, is the artist, but it was a song about kind of like international like peace, like friendship and all this different things. And I realized like I was literally as far away from home as I've ever been in my entire life. And I don't even think I could get farther from Charlotte than in the Philippines. But when you see human experience on a global level in different places, um, it kind of brings you into the idea that everybody's looking for the same thing in different ways, and different strategies for that, and different flavors and different spices of life. But I was with soldiers, and they had just had they had some issues in their country, especially in the South, as of recently. And I was a stranger who they'd never seen before and never would see again, and we were just singing about like just love, man. And it was wild.
mm,
um and even though travel and connecting yourself to the world can in some ways be a bit tragic, because you can expose yourself to not only the problems of your life, maybe your family and your friends or your community, but extend it to the planet. And it's a trade-off where if you're allowing your heart to be exposed to something that wide and that the breadth of that extent, then you also give yourself both the happiness and the tragedy of the human experience itself. So it's it's a growth moment. Um, but yeah, unexpected. And again, that's one of the best parts of it is you don't go outside of your comfort zone to embrace the familiar. You go outside of your comfort zone to embrace the unknown in a lot of ways.
Mhm. Dude, that was beautifully said. Beautifully said. Man, dude, there's so many I have so many things that we can dive into. I could talk to you for literally hours. You're so well spoken, so articulate, so aware. It's so fun talking to you, man, but we're gonna slowly start to wrap it up.
All
So if
right.
you don't mind, um, I always find talking about the future is always weird sometimes because sometimes in the manifestation process we like don't want to say I'm gonna do this because when
Yeah,
it come true like it hurts, and it's hard. So sometimes it's like work in silence and then let the actions speak for themselves. So whatever you're willing to share, dreams, goals, ambitions, it could be 3 years, 3 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. When you're 80 years old on your rocking chair, now you'll be dancing gardening probably. You'll be like when you're 100 years old on your
definitely.
rocking chair, or if you just have a vision board or just a mood board of colors of feelings that you want to feel, what would you say for that the future of what you're looking for?
Yeah, man, it's a great question. Um, well, my ultimate goal is to eventually retire and open up a hostel.
Oh, I like
So,
that, dude. I
because
like
like
that.
because here's the thing is I realize that when you're and again my parents are getting a little bit older at this point. They're in their 60s, and um, I realize that you need something to look forward to. I realize even though I've been on many beaches with many drinks, sitting on a beach with drinks is not fulfilling. So you want something to work towards, and hopefully I will over the course of my lifetime gain the skills that allow me to open up a place like that. Not only to have a place where people around the world can share experiences together, but just to have fun with it, man. Plan live events, have bands come through. If it's by the ocean, maybe have a joint, scuba diving operation. I think it's completely ridiculous to hoard money your entire life and then sit on it, watching it, slowly drip away as you try to figure out what the next Jeopardy, scheduling program is. And it's just that's not at all what I'm trying to aim towards, and finding something to do, finding some opportunity like that. It's just important to find somebody to do it with. And so right now, my journey with my current girlfriend, has been really interesting. I think she has a lot of the same priorities, and a lot of my future plans is kind of working towards understanding if that's the direction that I want to take my life, and if I want to do with her. And again, it's only you only really understand that when you're able to finally be in the same place, and we've been working towards that for quite a while. So hopefully that goes in the great direction. But most obviously, again, on the 16th, I'm on a plane to Colombia. It's going to be my first solo adventure since meeting Miriam. I did Europe and Netherlands by myself, but I chased her to Philippines, took her around the US, and chased her around Costa Rica. So now I'm just kind of doing me, which is going to be really fun. Kind of separating from that association with self and identity, and putting that I've kind of put in somebody else, that's been productive, but I really want to just kind of realign myself with what I am, who I love, like who I love being around. It's a funny thing to say, but moving to a new country, like not that I have to relearn how to meet new friends, but what better way to prepare yourself to completely associate and adopt a new culture than attempting to do that premeditatively, in small slivers throughout a country that's fun to travel with anyway. So that's the next for me. I think the biggest thing I'm excited about for that, two things. One, I will be able to go to a couple different islands. One of them is San Andreas, another one is Provencia, which is like an hour and a half plane flight off the coast, but it's attached to the world's third largest barrier reef. I'm an avid scuba diver, and I am going to spend every single day of that week in the water,
Mm.
swimming around, having a good time. And then I think beyond that, I'll be in Medellin for the Flower Festival, which is the second biggest celebration of the year there. So that'll be super fun, man. I've got some Dutchies right now. That if saying there's just absolutely an incredible country. So excited for that next step, see what I'll learn, see how I grow. Um, I've been living at my parents' place since October, which has allowed me in a lot of ways to go travel and spend time with people and achieve, the next steps, but need a break. Everybody does. You pay with your soul. Everybody knows that. Um, And then beyond that, man, yeah, off to Belgium. I got to start learning Dutch. God help me. That language is interesting, very guttural, kind of like German.
Yeah.
And on my birthday this year, I'll end up meeting my girlfriend's entire family and extended family. So that's within like a couple days of me getting there. So it's going to be full on, man. I've been complaining in a way of the slow pace that life has been going at, but I know as soon as all this begins, I'm gonna I'll probably give anything to get back to it and
Right.
just spend a couple nights by myself, kind of decompressing. Um, and then after that, man, I've kind of got the next step, and I've got where my life wants to end. But in the middle of that, man, it's tough to say. I'm going for a master's in something specific. Um, for me, it's interesting because I'm not sure I'm exactly passionate about it going in. But your education's super cheap over there, and with a scholarship, it's practically free. So it's a good opportunity to get a visa, transfer to a different place, and see what that kind of opportunity can lead me into. Um, but just trying to learn again how to be an adult, what that means, trying to understand what maturity levels are possible. Finding people that, as I said before in the very beginning of this, like finding people that I want to eventually be, associate myself with people that I want to grow eventually into. Um, Identifying those, having a good time, staying under budget, saving up for some stuff in the future, and I'll be interested where it goes too. I think there's some people who are blessed with the ability to say that, to line up the dots and say, this is exactly where I want my life to go. And I believe that if, as long as I commit myself to a path, um, then eventually those dots will eventually, start appearing. But right now, I'm trying to do the best I can to keep an open mind. And I think in a lot of ways, that's a little bit more difficult than establishing a goal far into the future and, blindly going after it. Your 20s aren't for figuring out what you're doing. It's about figuring out who you are and who you want to be. And with the right skill sets, and the right dedication and preparation from all that, you'll eventually, whatever you'll do, you'll be successful at. And trying to keep that pressure off myself, doing little things between here and now to kind of prepare for that. And yeah, got to get used to the rain. New clothes, new people, new environments, and new starts. So
Dude, that was incredible. I mean, you're manifesting it, like just your language, your mindset, your approach, the growth, dude. The just hearing you talk about like I don't connect with the idea and the story of retiring and then sitting on the beach on the golf course, like not growing. Like you got to continue to grow. That's the
dude,
juice of life. That's what keeps you alive. And I'm not like there is no right, there is no wrong, but I gotta say like owning a hostel is like the best answer I've ever heard for that, dude. Because
yeah, why not?
was when I was like traveling in California, I was big on looking at couch surfing. And dude, there was like a guy who had like 150 reviews, so a bunch of people had used his house, and he's like a retired veteran, you know? And what
Yeah,
better way to live your life than provide your house, open your space up to invite young people to who need a place to crash for free, and you in reciprocity because there is an exchange of energy there. They're not giving you money, but they're giving you life experiences, they're giving you stories, they're keeping you alive, they're keeping you young, you're like living vicariously through them. I'm like, dude, that's the coolest idea. And then to bring in other things that you love, different people coming together, having a good time, live music, dude, the excursions of diving. I'm just like, bro, that's the best idea I've ever. And you're gonna make it happen, dude. You're gonna live such a rich, fun, fulfilling, purpose-driven life for these next, 30 years. And then when you're ready to move on, you're gonna get it and you're gonna give back and you're gonna be a mentor to all these young boys and girls and humans. It's gonna be freaking cool. And I'm gonna be there, dude. I'm gonna be there.
yeah.
It's gonna be
And
sick.
see that's the funny part too, man, is like as you go through life, there's a couple different perspectives on friendships and relationships. I've heard the analogy of, kind of, build out your van, try to fill the seats. I've heard a lot of different stuff, but for me, it's like, how do I build my hostel? It's like, all right, who's gonna be the bartender? Is that Juwan? Is Juwan gonna be a bartender? Who's gonna be who's gonna be the guy who does the improv show? Is that Andrew? Is that gonna be Andrew? Is he gonna come by every once in a while? Like
Mm,
I so on my, I guess, retirement side, my all my grandparents on my mom's side are all gone now. I think they lived a pretty fulfilling life. It was fun having them around. They were a huge part of who I was growing up, and I spent a lot of time over at their house. But on my dad's side, both of them are 90 years old. The grandmother and my grandfather. One of them is not doing well. He hopefully will live out the year. We don't know. The other one has incredibly late stage Alzheimer's, like can't move, can't speak, doesn't remember anything. And it's crazy because every time we go to visit them, my grandfather always talks just the most praise you've heard about an individual, about how amazing she was and how amazing she still is. And you want to find a love that again, it goes beyond your physical capabilities and goes straight to who you are as an individual, but also like when somebody says, "Hey, I want to visit Grandpa," I want them to be like, "Oh my God, yes!" Not, "Oh my God, we have to do this again." Like you wanted people to come around you and have a good time, man. And I think like the the older you get, especially when you start to retire, a sense of control is very, very healthy and something that it's very healthy to have, the ability to plan stuff, create stuff. I feel like one of the greatest gifts of old age is the ability to transfer what you know to others. And I feel like if you're putting yourself in a situation that you're not a mentor or not the creator of a community, then you're losing out on perhaps one of the best parts of being in that stage of life. It's not meant to put your feet up and give up all that other responsibility that you've had in the past. It's the ability to say, "Hey, on my own terms and my own time, I'm going to show everybody like what life's about from what I've seen." And dude, and stories get shared so quickly and so easily in a place like a hostel. And having young people around as an old geezer probably keeps you young too. So
100%, 100%, dude. Amazing, amazing. All right, now to wrap this bad boy up, I got a few final rapid fire questions to make this a professional podcast. All
go
right, so
for it.
first, we got a deep one. Right now, in this moment, what would you say brings you the most joy?
Most joy. Joy is a funny one. We have a lot of different words for happiness and joy and contentment. And so sometimes it's hard to choose in what way you're referring to it. But joy for me is, um, I think it's found in the moments of silence. I think there's a great test of whether you should be, or you're in the right company, is if you can sit in silence, and there's no feelings of anxiety or awkwardness. And a lot of the time that I've spent waiting and being patient for the next steps, I've had to invest in being in silence by myself. And I think those, when I practice yoga and meditation, those moments of silence by myself that, occur without anxiety, that gives me joy. That gives me a sense of peace and balance and foundation that I can, uh, I guess apply to the rest of that day, no matter what has happened. But to be honest, man, I got hooked by the One Piece bug. So I've been absolutely tearing through that anime. God help me, I'm on like episode 898 now. So
There you go.
it's kind of a grind now, man. I probably have to take a little bit of a break, but watching Luffy do his thing is kind of fun. So
Yeah. Wait, did you see the live
yeah,
action One Piece? Because I was listening to more
I
about this.
I haven't yet, man. I'm still too invested in trying to get through my stuff. But what I will say is the Cowboy Bebop live action one is actually pretty damn good. Most of the time they mess that up. But I think live action wise, I don't know if you heard of this, but they're making a live action How to Train Your Dragon movie. Yo,
Dude, I
that's
love
gonna.
that trilogy.
I loved it too, so I can't
It's,
wait to see
I
what
was
they do with it. I've seen the actors they picked for it is brilliant. Like they're perfect.
really,
So I want them to not mess this up.
gosh, dude, I was like the third film. I was like, this is one of the greatest love stories of all time because it's all non-violent
Right.
in the dragons. I'm like, I love that. That's gonna. It's always scary though turning the adaptation because we don't want it to ruin something we love so much, which has happened quite.
Yeah. But I mean, look, I would rather them do that than give me like they're also doing like Toy Story 6. 6? Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? Finding Nemo 3, Moana 2, Inside Out 2. There's like one or two original movies this entire year by like Pixar,
Right.
DreamWorks, and Disney. And I'm just like, guys,
Mm,
guys.
you're getting there. We're getting there. All right, now, what would you say are your top four values?
Oh, man. Top 4 values is a very interesting thing.
Tricky.
Um, I would say number one is awareness, 100%.
Mhm.
Um, if you're not aware of how your mind works and you're unable to fix it. I dealt a lot with comparison. I've always had my entire life. And I suffer from something I call instant karma, where like if I make fun of anybody or anything, whatever I made fun of them for will immediately come smack me in the face. Like if I make fun of somebody, and it can be small, like I could get mad at somebody for how they're driving, and then suddenly I make a bad turn and cut somebody off almost immediately afterwards. It's like whatever I call out in the world comes back to me like
All in,
immediately.
yeah.
It's I don't know understand. It's probably just me freaking out, but I think it's real. So awareness is a big one. I've developed it to the point where I can catch thoughts before they finish, which has been very, very funny. It's like I look at somebody who's like maybe hasn't taken care of themselves, and before I even begin the thought of, oh, look at that person, I'm like, Cole,
Hmm.
you ate a lot of snacks this week. Shut up. Don't start on that. Because if you so the instant karma is quite funny. Awareness is really, really important. And again, that only comes with when you're able to quiet the mind. A lot of mental issues come with ruminations on unhealthy topics, and the awareness of those topics coming up are is a powerful tool. Um, Values. I don't know if love is a value, but yeah, love is such an all-encompassing word. We need more words associated with that. The English language lacks tremendously in that area. But I think yeah, love is a value that I've leaned into a lot, especially being in a long distance relationship this long. Um, I've also ascribed to I call it the hell yeah energy. If I almost never spend my time with anybody else, it just doesn't give me that kind of reciprocity. It's like when I walk into a room and there's always a couple friends you got that are like, oh, you're like he's here, Edna's here, let's go. If that
Yeah.
doesn't happen, I'm not hanging out with you anymore. Like it's and it's kind of funny because you got to meet new people and you got to bring that energy too.
Hmm.
But you shouldn't beg for anybody to hang out with you anymore. You've got to be confident enough with yourself and okay with spending time. And so cultivating love, finding that love in other people and in yourself, I think that's a huge value right now. And making sure you're around the right people. You're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most energy and time with, whether that's physical ability, mental health, um, achievements, everything. So be very careful who's in that ring with you. A third value, I think it goes along with love, but trust. Um, trust that trust that nobody else knows what they're doing either, and feel good that you're on your way and at least you're trying. Um, you only lose when you stop. But trust that, if you don't talk to somebody for a couple of days, trust that they'll be happy to see you the next time. And if you live out of a space of trust, then it really kind of eliminates a lot of not self-doubt, but self-anxiety about what other people are thinking about you or feeling about you. Like you don't have any control. All you can give is trust. And that's a transition that's been interesting for me is again, you only have limited control. Seriously. Um, you got to let go. The fourth value that's really important to me right now, I think is courage. I think as we're going through, life, and I think I'm about to take some enormous steps. The enormity of which is not exactly hit me in the full sense yet. Like I've got the backpack, I got the luggage packed almost immediately. I was so ready for it. It's so
Hmm.
ridiculous. Um, But until I'm on those planes, I don't think it's really going to hit. But there's a bookmark that I've used since childhood, and I really didn't look at it or think anything of it. But it says the world shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage, and I thought about that a lot. And I think along with trust, you have to have the courage to know that um, if you attempt something new and it doesn't work out, it's not going to be a failure. It's always a growth moment. You have to have the courage that you are enough in the moments to explore or dive into things that you think are beyond you in a lot of ways. And risks need to be taken. If you don't take risks, then the risk you took is being silent, being still. So whatever, there's always the positives and negatives, but have the courage if you believe in anything to pursue it, because it doesn't need to be a heart wrenching call from the heavens. It just can be sometimes a whisper that you're like, hey, you might need to be in this place, or hey, you need to talk to this person, or hey, you know, maybe rediscover this a little bit in yourself. It doesn't have to be a shout, it could be a whisper, but have the courage to listen to it. So
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love it. All right. What's your spirit animal?
oh, dude, otters. I think otters are fun. So I love the water, scuba diving, surfing, swimming, everything. Otters, they hang out in packs. They got the boys, and one thing that's super fun is when they're really young, all otters have a little pouch, and they find a stone, and it's like their favorite stone, and they use it to like crack open mussels and clams and shit, and they keep the same stone for their whole lives. Like it's their favorite rock, and if they lose it, they're just inconsolably sad. I think that's hilarious. So yeah, I think otters are pretty cool. I think that'd be mine. But
That's a great answer. Great answer. All right. You said that you were an avid reader. I know you read a lot growing up. I don't want to say like what's your favorite book, but I always find certain books come into our lives, just like films and movies, at a certain moment at a certain time in our life where if we watched it or read that book a year ago, it probably wouldn't have received in a certain way, but certain things happened into our lives. And then we read this book,
yeah,
watched that film, and it was just like, poof. Was there a book that did that for you?
dude, I've got so many. Like I literally had to
Rattle
pull it
off.
up. Oh God. The most impactful book that I've ever read was a book called The Drifters by James A. Michener. And it's a really interesting story about an older fellow who basically through different ways is involved with the lives of like 7 to 8 kids between the ages of like 18 and 24, whether from the mentor perspective or from a life perspective. But he meets kids in the 70s, everything from kids in America, from Israel, the UK, Australia, South Africa, Brazil, and they all end up meeting at this small little coastal town in Spain. And to see them all make the decision that they need to step away from whatever life's pulling them into, and really kind of take those moments to understand who they are. Um, Whether one of them was involved in a war in Israel, one of them was involved in the student protests over in the U.S., one of them was a draft dodger, one of them came from royalty, but his family divorced, and so he was like strung between the life of a commoner with his family that he really enjoyed, but the calling to be something more back in his hometown, and to see them all kind of deal with their own emotional issues of what am I supposed to be and what do I want to be. Um, that book was unbelievable. And to make matters even crazier on that, I actually found the book, I can't believe this, on the top of a shelf in a gas station after coming home from the bars one night, sad and feeling like the things I was doing, weren't heading anywhere. And I found it and I read it, the entire 200-page book that night. Nothing's come close. My favorite, and that's kind of like a nonfiction fiction-esque one. It's kind of interesting. My favorite fiction book, The Stand by Stephen King. It's a massive read, but I mean, nobody does storytelling better than him. Um, and my favorite one for, I guess, self-help and learning is a thing called Siddhartha's Brain by James Kingsland. It's an interesting book for me because there's so many different self-help opportunities and strategies, but when you see something that connects ancient wisdom to and you see it proved by modern technology, I think it's always a little bit more impactful. And they worked with a lot of monks and did a lot of brain scans and imagery to understand how meditation and how the practice of mindfulness affects and helps develop different parts of your brain along the process, going from imaging people who just started in meditation to lifelong meditators and understanding how it changes the brain. And if you change the brain, you change the way that stimulation and experiences are absorbed. Fascinating book, and one hell of a way to show you scientifically why getting your stuff together and quieting your mind is not only important but can literally change the way you see it. So
Yeah,
if I
they're
gotta give three,
I love it.
oh,
I love
such
it.
good reads.
But dude, I feel like the people who are gonna be the pioneers in this day and age are the people who can bridge the gap between the metaphysical and the physical. Like
100%.
dude, and because it's already proven. Like we honestly don't like tribes, monks have been doing this for thousands of years, and it's been like it works. It works. But we
It
need to
just does.
unfortunately like pierce the analytical minded people who need scientific proof that it works. And people are doing that, and we're starting to be able to see trends and studies and scans, and it's only a matter of time until it really starts to. I think it already is like in a lot of like CEO mindset, like meditation is a big part in a lot of different areas where it wasn't prominent before. So it's a really cool time to be alive, man. It's really cool.
Yeah, no,
Right.
it's I saw somebody refer to it as it's interesting because I'm a 99er. It's like I was born at the end of the fuck around century, and now the rest of my life can be spent in the find out century. So let's just find out, man. See,
Yeah.
the cards are on the table. Let's flip them.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. All right, now you're also a lover of philosophy. Um, First one that comes to mind, what's your favorite quote?
Mm. Let your mind be like the sky, holding everything and holding on to nothing. There's if you want to encapsulate my journey of trying to figure out what I'm supposed to believe and how my mind's supposed to work, nothing's better than that. I mean,
Mm.
to hold everything but hold on to nothing, to accept relationship with the world but not possessiveness of it,
Mm.
like, dude, that's if you can take that step, and it's still one that I'm struggling with and one that I'm still growing into. But if there's ever a goal, that'd be my goal spiritually.
Dude, I feel like the use of paradox is such a big part of all of our lives, you know. I think it's prominent in so many areas, and which is why it's hard sometimes to see people. I mean, I lived like this for a long time where things are black and white, things are this or that. But it's just not the case, man. And like that
No.
quote proves it, and so many other as we really dive in and seek truth and not ego and destruction and wanting to be right all the time. We seek truth, we find that there is that paradox, there is that yin and yang, and it's beautiful. I like that. I like that. And it's challenging to get to that state, you know. But
Dude.
when you just get dip your toe in it, oh, well, you taste it, you feel it.
Yeah, you get the shiver up your spine, man. I feel that. I
Oof.
feel that. And that's a lot of after all the time I we spent talking about philosophy and religion, and this was such a cool moment at the wedding where they played Alan Watts.
Dude, wait, did you?
Um,
So I
oh,
was responsible for that. Well, so
you little, I love Alan Watts, man. I found
so
him,
good.
and suddenly everything just started making a lot more sense in everything. God, there's a thing on Spotify. It's just like Alan Watts podcast. He's got like
Mm,
he records it with the Ram Dass Association. If anybody listening hasn't heard it, just put it on. It'll
mm.
make no sense, and that's the point. He's supposed to make light of the world, and the more you listen to it, you're just like, wow, this man's killing it. Everything from him is amazing. And if I could like hire a guru, and it couldn't be Yoda, oh, it's Alan Watts,
Dude,
man.
Alan
Like,
Watts. He's
I
got
want
like
him
you go on
back.
Spotify and look up Alan Watts stuff. Like they have like really fun, beautiful, spiritual music in the background on top of his incredible
Yeah,
voice. It just gets you there. It gets you there. But dude,
it's there, man.
it was funny because Carissa, when they said like, "Yo, could you help, cue the music for the wedding?" Um, we were in the car and she was like, because we had a rehearsal dinner where we rehearsed like, all right, you're gonna play this song for everyone walking in, and they're gonna play this song for Cage, and he's gonna walk in, they're gonna play this song for Carissa. But she said, we're not. I have like it's like it was like a secret for everyone. Like she didn't tell their parents, she didn't tell friends, like didn't tell anyone. We're like, I want you to put this Alan Watts. It's like a minute just talking about love right before I go on.
Yes.
So I was like, everyone's gonna think I'm fucking up hardcore right now because this was not planned. And then we did it, and
Right.
I just sat there because I actually didn't listen to it beforehand, but I think I'd heard it like a while before. And I
Oh
just sat there
yeah.
and I felt it, dude. I think, and like I think everyone felt it. It was perfect. It was. I love
Man.
how she chose that because he just in 1 minute just absolutely broke love open and just dissected it in such a beautiful way, and it felt so right for the moment. It was really cool. It was really
Yeah,
cool.
I'm gonna steal that, man. I think it's fantastic. And he's one of those guys where you look into his life and who he was, and he had a family, he had kids, and he lived the fullness of a human being without having to disassociate himself like a monk or something. He was able to be among the people, record himself, get passionate about things.
That's the goal, man.
He literally just he loved life so much that at his very end he was just like, I wish there was some way I could figure out how to continue doing this after I die. He's like, I love who loved life so much at the end. The only regret was that it wasn't longer because of how much he was enjoying what he was living, how he was living. It wasn't, I wish I would have changed this. I wish I would have done this differently. He said, no, life is such a part of me and I'm so connected to it that it's tough to not be able to share and teach and enjoy, for a little bit longer. But now by the blessing of technology, I can listen to Alan Watts every day. I've never met him. I never met his family. I never met even anybody who's associated with him. But um, yeah, what a
Bro,
cool guy.
the power of
Shout
love.
him out.
Yes, sir, Mr. Watts. Yes, sir. All right, final question, my brother. All right, so let's say someone's listening to this, who's just a young kid going through the trials and tribulations of life, trying to figure things out, trying to just getting put in a box after box after box, trying to figure out what they want to do, and then not just know what they want to do, pursue and have the courage to pursue what they want to do. What advice would you say to that young person who's going through the middle school? Maybe he's in high school right now because high school I feel like was such a weird time for us, you know. Maybe got hit
God,
by
I don't
all
know.
these punches, and you have one piece of advice to give to a young kid going through a tough time, what would you say?
Mm. Number one, you're not alone. You can only see the fabric of your own mind and not the fabric of anyone else's. And if we have the ability to listen in and understand what other people are feeling, you realize that even though it feels overwhelming and unique to you, it's actually a very common human experience. Nobody's got it together. Something hard to admit and something that you'll realize the older you get is we're all kids. Some of us are just older. That doesn't change. Um, and the most important thing for you during this time is the ability to understand what you don't like, what you're not interested in. Finding what you love will come later. As I said before, even in the job search or anything else, like find the people in your life that you want to eventually be like. They're going to be older. They might be a teacher. They might be an adult. Spend time with them. Um, Enjoy every step of life that you have. It's very, very easy to look on to the next one and think it's going to be better. Um, but there's a quote I like is, the grass is always greener on the other side because it's fertilized with bullshit. Um, there's nothing but the present. So live in it. The future never comes. Every day you just wake up again. Um, and find little things that you love and hold on to them. Don't worry about trying to become something or someone. Be you, and have a healthy sense of pressure for developing yourself, and a healthy sense of understanding that you know the good things in life can't be rushed. So, good luck, buddy. That's all I gotta say. This is
That
gonna
was,
be a weird one. Yeah,
I think that was great, man. Dude, always such a freaking honor to be in your presence. I'm so stoked to see where life takes you, man, and how you seize every opportunity out there on the other side of the world. But before I let you go, let the audience know, where can we find you? Where can we support you as you enter this new stratosphere, this new season of life?
Yeah, man. I mean, right now, not. I mean, I've got Instagram, but to be honest, uh, yeah, it's got some cool stuff on there. But I think instead of supporting me, I think one thing to always note is that, um, as a person, as an individual, you are always part of the world. The entire ocean can be encapsulated in a single drop sometimes, and that if you just improve yourself and focus on you, um, just one improvement in yourself makes the world a better place. So don't worry about me. I'll figure it out. If I have something later and I jump on for the third time and there's a podcast that I've started or a book I've written, I'll definitely send it out to you. But um, yeah, again, just love yourself. Treat yourself as somebody that you have the responsibility of taking care of. Um, and once you're able to do that, then you can take care of others, and that's the best feeling in the world. So
That's right. That's right. All right, cool, my brother, dude. Appreciate you so much, man. Always an honor. Thanks for being here. And dude, I'll see you around. I'll see you on the other side of the world. We're gonna travel together
that's
one day, man. We're
hell
gonna get
yeah.
in that
My door
water.
is always open.
All right, brother. Peace.